The last thing Commander Marcus Chen remembered was the cold, the absolute bone-deep cold of Europa's ice shelf cracking beneath his feet. He remembered the desperate scramble, his crew's voices crackling through the comm system, and then the sensation of falling into darkness so complete it felt like being erased from existence. The mission logs would later show that his life signs flatlined for 47 seconds before the emergency beacon activated. But Marcus didn't know any of that yet. What he knew was warmth. Impossible, inexplicable warmth that seemed to seep into his bones and chase away the killing frost that should have claimed him. His eyes flickered open, expecting the sterile white of a medical bay or the eternal blackness of death. Instead, he found himself staring at a face that made his breath catch, and not from the pain of broken ribs. She was beautiful in a way that defied every human standard of beauty he'd ever known. Her skin was a deep, rich purple that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence, like twilight given form. Her eyes were large and expressive, the color of molten gold with vertical pupils that contracted as she noticed him stirring. But it was her hair that truly mesmerized him, long, flowing strands of silver white that caught the light and reflected it back in prismatic colors, as if each strand contained tiny rainbows. "You're awake," she said, and her voice was like music, melodic and layered with harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. "I wasn't certain you would survive. Your species is remarkably fragile." Marcus tried to speak, but his throat was dry, his voice a croak. Where am I?" "My sanctuary," she replied, moving with fluid grace that reminded him of water flowing. She held something to his lips, a cup of some kind filled with liquid that tasted faintly of minerals and something sweet he couldn't identify. "You fell through the ice. I found you in the water below. Your body was beginning to freeze." As his vision cleared and his mind sharpened, Marcus took in his surroundings. He was lying on something soft, not quite a bed, but a platform covered in materials that seemed to adjust to his body temperature. The room around him was carved from ice, but it glowed with a soft, blue-green bioluminescence that made it feel warm rather than cold. Organic-looking structures grew from the walls, pulsing gently with light and what might have been respiration. "Who are you?" Marcus managed to ask, his scientific training kicking in even through his confusion and pain. "My name is Lyra," she said, settling beside him with her legs tucked beneath her in a position that seemed both graceful and completely natural to her physiology. "I am Celestian. My people have lived beneath Europa's ice for longer than your species has walked upright on your world." Marcus's mind reeled. The mission had been searching for microbial life in Europa's subsurface ocean. They'd found evidence of complex chemistry, hints of biological processes, but nothing had prepared them for this for her. An entire civilization living beneath the ice, evolved in isolation from the rest of the solar system. "My crew," he said suddenly, trying to sit up despite the protests of his battered body. "They were on the surface. The ice was collapsing." Lyra's hand on his chest was gentle but firm, easing him back down. Her touch was warm, warmer than any human's, and he felt a strange, tingling sensation where her fingers made contact with his skin. "Your companions retreated to their vessel. They are searching for you, but they will not find you here. My sanctuary is shielded from your detection equipment." "You have to let me contact them," Marcus insisted. "They'll think I'm dead." They'll leave. They will not leave without certainty, Lyra interrupted, her golden eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his words die in his throat. And you are not yet well enough to travel. Your body sustained significant damage. 3 of your ribs are fractured, your left lung was partially collapsed, and you suffered severe hypothermia. By your medical standards, you should be dead. Then how? I healed you, she said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My people have certain abilities. We exist in harmony with the biological systems of this moon. We can influence cellular regeneration, encourage healing processes, maintain thermal regulation. She paused, and something flickered in her expression, something almost shy. But it required extensive physical contact. I hope you do not find that disturbing. Marcus felt heat rise to his face that had nothing to do with fever. The implication of her words, combined with the memory of that impossible warmth that had greeted him upon waking, painted a picture he wasn't entirely sure how to process. This alien woman had quite literally saved his life through means he didn't understand, holding him close enough to share her body heat and whatever else her abilities entailed. Disturbing? No, he said quietly. Thank you, you saved my life. A smile transformed Lyra's face, and Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. When she smiled, her features seemed to glow even brighter, and he could see what looked like delicate, luminescent patterns beneath her skin, like constellations mapping the pathways of her circulatory system. You are welcome, Marcus Chen, she said, and hearing his name in her musical voice sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. Though I must confess my reasons were not entirely altruistic. Oh, he found himself smiling despite the pain, despite the impossibility of the situation. Lyra stood and moved to what appeared to be a window carved into the ice. Through it, Marcus could see the ocean of Europa, vast and dark and filled with bioluminescent life that drifted like stars through the water. My people are isolationist, she said softly. When we detected your kind approaching our moon, there was great debate. Some wanted to destroy your vessels before you could discover us. Others advocated for contact. I argued that we should observe, learn, understand. She turned back to him, and in her eyes Marcus saw something he recognized: loneliness. But I confess that my arguments came from a place of personal desire as much as logic. I have always been curious about other forms of life, other civilizations. When you fell through the ice, when I found you dying in the water, I saw an opportunity. To learn, yes, but also... She trailed off, seeming uncertain for the first time. To not be alone, Marcus finished for her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding that transcended species, that spoke to the universal need for connection that seemed to exist in all sentient beings. Over the following days, though time was difficult to track in the eternal twilight of Lyra's sanctuary, Marcus healed with impossible speed. Lyra explained that her people's healing abilities accelerated his natural recovery processes, knitting bone and tissue far faster than human medicine could achieve. But the healing sessions required her touch, her presence, and Marcus found himself looking forward to them with an anticipation that went beyond mere medical necessity. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their worlds. Marcus described Earth's blue skies and green oceans, the warmth of the sun on skin, the diversity of human cultures and experiences. Lyra spoke of the Celestians' long history, their society built in harmony with Europa's unique ecosystem, their philosophy of balance and preservation. "Do you ever wish you could see the surface?" Marcus asked one day as Lyra helped him practice walking again. Her arm was around his waist, supporting him, and he was acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. "Every day of my life," she admitted. "But our people cannot survive in the cold as you experience it. The ice above is death to us, just as the water below would have been death to you without intervention. That's why you're so warm," Marcus realized. "Your body temperature must be significantly higher than human norm." Lyra nodded, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders with the movement. "We are adapted to the geothermal vents, to the warm currents that flow through Europa's ocean. Your kind nearly froze to death in conditions that would be merely cool to me." Marcus stopped walking, turning to face her fully despite the protest of his still healing ribs. They were standing close, closer than strictly necessary for medical support, and he could feel the heat radiating from her body. "Lyra," he said carefully, "when I go back, and I will have to go back eventually, what happens then?" Pain flashed across her features, quickly hidden but not quite fast enough. "You return to your people," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "You tell them what you've learned, or you don't, as you choose. My people will retreat deeper into the ocean, and perhaps we will never encounter your kind again." "And that's it," Marcus heard the edge in his own voice. "We just say goodbye and pretend this never happened." "What else can we do?" Lyra asked, and now the pain in her voice was unmistakable. "You cannot live in my world, Marcus, and I cannot live in yours. We are separated by biology as much as by the ice." Marcus reached up, his hand trembling slightly, and touched her face. Her skin was impossibly smooth, warm as summer sunlight, and he felt that now familiar tingle of energy where they connected. "There has to be a way," he said quietly. "Humanity has spent centuries finding ways to survive in impossible places. We've learned to live in the vacuum of space, at the bottom of our deepest oceans, in the frozen wastes of our poles. If there's one thing we're good at, it's adapting." Lyra leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. When they opened again, they shimmered with what might have been tears, though they glowed with the same golden luminescence as her irises. "And if your people fear mine, if they see us as a threat to be eliminated rather than a civilization to be respected, then I'll make them understand," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "I'll make them see what I see, a people worth knowing, worth protecting, worth—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Worth what?" Lyra whispered, her face now inches from his. "Worth everything," Marcus breathed, and then he was kissing her. It was unlike any kiss he'd ever experienced. Her lips were warm, impossibly warm, and there was that electric tingle again, but stronger now, spreading through his entire body like a current of pure energy. Lyra made a sound somewhere between surprise and pleasure, and then she was kissing him back, her arms wrapping around him with careful strength. When they finally parted, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I don't care about the obstacles," he said firmly. "I don't care about the biology or the politics or the impossibility of it all. I nearly died on this moon, and you brought me back to life. You've shown me wonders I never imagined, and you've made me feel things I didn't know I could feel. I'm not ready to give that up. I'm not ready to give you up." Lyra's luminescent patterns flared brighter beneath her skin, and Marcus realized it must be some kind of emotional response. "My people have a concept," she said softly, "of Salamara, a bonding between souls that transcends physical form. It is rare, precious, and once formed, it cannot be easily broken. I think, Marcus Chen, that we have formed Salamara whether we intended to or not. Then we find a way to make it work, Marcus said. You said your people were divided about how to approach humanity. Maybe this is the bridge. Maybe we're proof that our species can coexist, he smiled, can even love each other. It will not be easy, Lyra warned, but her eyes were shining with hope. There will be those among both our peoples who will oppose us. Nothing worth having is ever easy, Marcus replied. But I've been given a second chance at life. I don't intend to waste it by walking away from the best thing that's ever happened to me. They stood there in Lyra's sanctuary, two beings from different worlds, holding each other as the bioluminescent ocean swirled outside the ice walls. Neither of them knew what the future would bring, what challenges they would face, what opposition they would encounter. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's warmth, they didn't care. Marcus had fallen through the ice expecting death. Instead, he'd found life, a new kind of life he'd never imagined possible. And whatever came next, whatever obstacles the universe placed in their path, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would face it all with Lyra by his side. Sometimes the most shocking discoveries aren't the ones science predicts. Sometimes they're the ones that happen when you least expect them, in the last place you'd ever think to look, with the last person or being you'd ever imagine. And sometimes those are the discoveries that change everything. Marcus hadn't expected to wake up at all. What happened next had indeed shocked him. But as Lyra kissed him again, as her warmth chased away the last lingering cold in his bones, he realized that this shock was the best thing that had ever happened to him. The universe, it seemed, still had surprises left to offer. And Marcus Chen was ready to explore every single one of them, as long as Lyra was there to share the journey.